According to President Trump, you need a picture ID to buy groceries. Any any reason, I guess, to justify using voter ID laws to suppress voters. That's what the president of the United States is doing. In a rally yesterday in Florida, this is what the president of the United States had to say.
Which is why the time has come for voter ID, like everything else. Voter ID. You know, if you go out and you want to buy groceries, you need a picture on a card. You need ID. You go out and you want to buy anything, you need ID and you need your picture.
Now, early in today's show, we talked about the disconnect with reality that Donald Trump supporters have, right? And clearly, this is another example of it, because in what world do you have to go out and use an ID to buy it? The absurdity of it is pointless, pointing it out, right? There's, like I said, there's very little utility in pointing out how ridiculous conservatives have gotten. But the real purpose of this is to make the assumption that, or to make the claim that needing a voter ID to vote is as commonplace as going to the grocery store, when it's not. The underlying premise of voter ID laws really is voter suppression. Let's just be clear about that. I want to bring up a quote here to put it in context. Voting rights, and this is according to The Hill, voting rights groups have challenged a series of state voter ID laws, arguing that they are intended to suppress voter turnout among minority populations. Well, Republicans have fought for stronger voter ID laws, saying that they are necessary to prevent voter fraud. Now, we know that second part is completely untrue. Mike Turzai, former Republican leader of the Republican Party of Pennsylvania, made that clear all the way back in 2012 when he inadvertently let the world know exactly why they instituted voter ID laws.
Voter ID, which is going to allow Governor Romney to win the state of Pennsylvania. Done.
I mean, don't take my word for it, from his own mouth. The whole purpose of voter ID laws is to help the Republican Party win and maintain political power. That's what it has always been. The Brennan Center has done extensive research in it, in this, and you should look at their work. But I want to summarize their work with 3 statements from their website. This is what they say. Studies agree impersonation fraud by voters very rarely happens. Courts agree fraud by voters at the polls is nearly non-existent. Government investigations agree voter fraud is rare. Yet, the President of the United States and the Republican Party relentlessly attempt to institute voter ID laws across the country. Voter ID laws have a direct effect on minority populations participating in voting. That has been documented. Whether or not it has the ability to turn an election has yet to be determined, but we do know that it affects minority participation in voting. And Republicans know that when minorities vote, they generally vote for the Democratic Party. I wonder why that is. Take a look at your policies, perhaps. But instead of changing their policies, instead of doing anything to ameliorate the type of racism that exists both against black people and brown people with immigration policy, instead of changing any of that, they said, the solution here is to, well, since minorities don't like how racist we are, let's just make sure minorities can't vote. And the way you do that is making voter ID as ridiculous as, I don't know, going to the grocery store and having to show ID. And in that conflated statement that makes absolutely no sense is exactly where the Republican Party exists. That's where their thinking rests. And that is how they are going to get this passed across the country if we don't do something about it. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks to Pat over at the studio. Thanks to Max over at the studio. David will be back tomorrow. David, thanks for having me. And hopefully I'll see you all again. Take care.